We try and promise you that we're going to deliver great content here at Crain & Company, and hopefully we have been. But today we have a very, very special guest.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, no, a very special guest. He's actually right now involved in a gas station war, which it's not as crazy as it sounds, or is it? I don't know if you've seen Mad Max Fury Road or not. It's kind of very similar to that. Good friend from Late Kick. You know him, Josh Pate, one of our favorites. Josh, good to get you to the studio.
Yeah. All right.
North Korea in here. You clap when we clap.
It's most positive energy I've felt in quite a while.
That's exactly right.
Hey, like best gas station war you remember is, I don't know. I thought we needed
oil.
one.
No, we
Time
did.
saver.
We needed. I mean, look, when the BP spill happened, that was serious. That one was up there. But this one, I feel like has bigger ramifications.
Sure, I think. Look, when you work, I work for CBS. Full disclosure, so you got like this big ad sales department behind you.
Beautiful.
It's just not the way I like to go about things necessarily. I like to instigate brand wars and then have them play out for the public because, of course, you achieve content in the otherwise deadest time of the year.
Exactly.
And number two, there could be a payday at the end of it.
Without a doubt. Listen, once you turn it into a competition, especially a public competition, the true winner is going to be you at the end of the day. It's a brilliant strategy. It's like Heath Ledger said in The Dark Knight, we're going to have tryouts.
We're going to have tryouts. So who's winning?
Well, I'll tell you who's winning is everybody who's responded so far. Because the one thing about me that you should know is I absolutely can be bought. Always been that way.
Just not cheaply.
Yeah, just not cheaply.
If you can't tell by the way I dress, yeah, it takes a little bit to hook me. But what I've noticed is I've had some loyalty to Buc-ee's for a little while. Like, I love the Beaver.
Yeah.
Me too.
However, the Buc-ee's social game really cratered in the last year. They used to lead the pack in social. And now, like, Love's has come on strong and Quick Trip's come on strong, and it's like the Super Bowl logo. Or you remember how they used to be awesome? And then it's like some corporate suit walked in and said, no, we got to sanitize this thing. We got to homogenize this thing. They should look the same every year. And now the Super Bowl logo is lame. And that's kind of what Buc-ee's social has been. So they haven't hopped in. I don't even have a committable offer.
They haven't even hopped in.
I don't have a committable offer.
Well, look, the landscape's changing. Is it conference realignment? Is that a lot what's going on?
I think maybe, but what they may think is I go develop 2 years at Quick Trip and then I transfer.
Yeah.
But I'm in it to win it. Like, I'm not
You're in it
transferring.
to win it.
I'm that corner in the MAC. Like, I'm not transferring to Alabama.
You know, my
I'm
first Buc-ee's experience was with these guys. We were driving down to New Orleans for the Final Four, and they said, we've got to stop at Buc-ee's. You got to experience
It's amazing.
I've never been. And they said, well, it's like Disney World for adults. I'm like, it's a gas. You go get gas.
It's not
What
just
are you
a gas
talking
station.
about? There's no way.
It's a lifestyle.
I walked into that place, and when I'm wrong, man, I tell people I'm wrong. I'm like, this is the greatest place I've ever experienced.
Yeah.
And I've been singing their praises ever since. I didn't know there was a social media fall off. I think we need to remedy that.
If they might be falling off in the social media game, but they're not falling off in the billboard game.
They're surging.
It's every 6 miles.
Well, I'll still say
6
Alexander Shannara is the leader of the billboard game still. I don't care what anybody says.
Yeah, but I mean, when you've got like brisket for thee, nuggets for me, just as I drive to Athens,
slogans
Alabama,
are
it's unbelievable.
Well, let's be honest. Like, if you drive past a Buc-ee's, like, you have to talk yourself into not stopping.
Yeah.
Like, you have to legitimately. There's a place I'm like, I gotta stop. I gotta stop here. I gotta get this. I drive past a Buc-ee's, and I'm having to talk myself into not stopping, which means that they've got me. But love what you're doing. It's fun to keep up with, Josh. And something else that is coming to college football fans outside of gas station wars, conference realignment, NIL, transfer portal freedom. It's the summer of love in the transfer portal every summer.
It could be the summer of love.
It could be the summer
of love. See, come on.
See, this is why.
That's why.
This is why. This is one of the many reasons why we vibe, Josh. There is a game coming out in July.
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion, that and Grand Theft Auto are the two greatest video games of all time. It's obviously NCAA football. EA Sports is releasing it. I'm hoping for the best. I don't want to hear your pessimism, Blaine. I don't. Let me get through this.
All right, that's fine.
Josh, number one, how good of a relationship did you have with that game when it's been like 10 years since one's came out? And do you have a great NCAA story? Is there a moment in time playing that game that, I don't know, maybe defined your life like a couple of us?
Yeah, so it's woven into my DNA. I did not buy the new game every year, though. What I did is, because I was a moderate gamer, never a massive gamer.
Same here.
And I stopped at like the second PlayStation that came out. I stopped. And I stopped advancing after the game with Reggie on the cover, which was like 04, 05s. Yeah. And so I just kept playing that one over and over and over again. I had a buddy who lived over in Phoenix City, Alabama, that's just across the river from Harris County.
Yep, I'm East Alabama, baby, Lee County.
And so I would go over to his house. We'd play till like 3 o'clock in the morning. No job, no responsibility, just losers. And I would run halfback direct, just nonstop.
I love it.
And it was kind of like Vic in Madden, where there was a rule that was attempted to be instituted there in the greater Phoenix City area of you can't run halfback direct because it can't be stopped.
Cheesy.
And I said, well, that's not a rule. Like,
No.
this is like me running Terry Grant halfback direct. It's not the same thing as you running Michael Vick at the Minnesota Vikings.
Without a
Madden.
doubt. Yeah, with that, I agree 100%. It's like the triple option on some of those other games.
Right.
Yeah.
You let me get in there with that multiple offense, and I know you can't stop the triple, especially not the dive. I'm going to rip your guts out and show them to you in front of God and
I
everything.
liked running the triple with Eric Crouch at Nebraska.
Mm.
It's like
Yeah.
01, 02, 03, something like that.
This guy over here, 6'8", hook,
And unstoppable play.
unstoppable.
Wait, so you're not feeling this thing? You don't?
Well, I get
Blaine's a pessimistic person.
Josh,
so-
because the Madden games that have came out lately, and they use the same engine that they do for the NCAA. That they
I've
use
heard
for
about
Madden
this.
The Madden engine is trash. It's not good. It's not fun to play with. That's why Madden has fallen off, and a lot of people don't even buy it when it comes out. I hope it's new mechanics. I don't think they have to do much. I think they need to make it like the last game somewhat. They're going to make their money in the online dynasties. That's what
For sure.
they're gonna do. So with the NIL, with the transfer portal, I'm seeing how they remedy all that together. See, this game is hard to mess up to me. It's one of those things, the less you do, the better off is it for the game, I think. So as long as it's not like Madden, mechanics-wise, I think it'll be okay. They need to use the same thing that they use for NCAA 14, a little more updated. I mean, if Elon Musk can land jets backwards on Mars, I'm pretty sure we can make a good NCAA football game.
I hope so. Me and Blaine were actually, I think, we're in a very small minority of people that were kicked out of an online dynasty for cheating in recruiting.
Allegedly.
Well, allegedly. Because here's what we did, Josh.
That sounded like an
Let me.
I do
give
have
you the
thoughts, but go
blueprint of
ahead.
this. So we found out, due to doing due diligence and putting in the work, that you could offer recruits during the off season, recruit them, because you have some that commit on the spot if you're at a big place, right? Those are the easy ones. We call those the golden offers. But as you're recruiting them throughout the year, once they get close, if you're Auburn, for example, and they're down to like Auburn, Alabama, Michigan, Ohio State, you could take away their scholarship and then re-offer them, and it would bolster yours because the scholarship offer is what gives you the most points out of any of the pitches. So we started as Tennessee in a dynasty of about, 12 people? That one was deep.
Yeah.
I think they even started a message board on that one. But we signed 14 five-stars in our second year. I think the second closest team signed 3.
Immediately got kicked out.
And well, we got warned one time, but again, we just found a better recruiting strategy than everybody else. Like, I don't understand. Do you think we should have gotten kicked out of the
No,
dynasty?
that's like the spring head coaching window when they said you can't go out anymore because folks got outworked. The thing about it is you didn't even have to drop a bag.
No.
Like there was no cash that changed hands. You ought to enter into your own class action lawsuit.
Well,
that's what everyone.
There's been talks.
We reached out to a couple of it. Actually, Alexander Shannara, believe it or not. We got some decent feedback, but it's still litigation. You know how long that takes.
I know how it
We
is.
actually
I
have
know
a
how
little
it
bit of
is.
money now, so we can afford a decent lawyer outside of somebody that's related to us. But about online dynasties. So we're going to start an online dynasty when this new one comes out. We've got a couple commitments. I know you're going through something right now. I'm not asking for a commitment right now, but we want to know that there is a formal offer from Crain and Company, right? Nod your head in agreement. Yes.
Well, let's do it like the athletic directors do when a new job opens. We're not offering you a spot to come into our online dynasty. But if we were, would you take it?
Yes.
Because then we might offer it to you.
Definitely, that's exactly right. So but the rules are, Josh,
Yeah.
it's got to be group of 5. I'm going Golden Flashes in Kent State. All right. He's from Statesboro.
Georgia Southern.
He's going Georgia Southern. It makes sense. Blaine is
Feeling it out.
Blaine's between UConn and what? Ohio, you said right now?
Between UConn, Ohio, and Central Michigan.
First and only time those words will come out of your mouth.
That's exactly right.
Here's the thing. I had the audacity, as have you guys, of explaining how you think the G5 should have their own playoff,
Yes.
which translates into
I'm asking
I hate
about
the
that, by the way.
G5. So I don't even know if I'm allowed to play with the G5 team.
Wow.
Well, and Cone, I'll let you start here with the group of 5 thing, because me and you are in agreement. We don't agree on everything, which is great. We shouldn't agree on everything. But this is one of the worst narratives, I think, in the college football realm. To be honest with you, it's not even tough love. It's just actually
sense, man.
love.
Yeah.
And it's if you think, and I said, Jim's bait shop can exist in Statesboro when we're talking about splitting the group of 5 off from a playoff standpoint. I'm not even saying you don't have to play each other during the regular season. I'm not saying that. Now, I think that's going to happen once we break away and we have 24 teams in a conference, because they're not going to increase regular season games due to player safety while increasing playoff games. But the fact that you think, and I'm not saying a one-off game on a Saturday with a mid-level P5 versus the best G5 out there, in aggregate, a group of 5 team is not going to win the national championship. They're just not, because you're operating in a different arena.
Mm-hmm.
Jim's Bait Shop can have a lot of success in Statesboro, but they're never going to be Walmart. They shouldn't be expected to be Walmart. Walmart has more money, they have more resources, they're in two different arenas. But saying that by having a group of 5 playoff on its own means you hate the group of 5, I think, and we think, is completely asinine and totally misses the common sense reality and the best thing for the group of 5.
Okay, so I haven't even hit this angle of it. There are like 5 different common sense angles. But let's go Jim's Bait Shop for a second.
Yeah.
Okay, so what happens today, not to get political, because we would never do that in this building.
No.
But what
Nobody
happens
knows where
today
we're at.
is you have the major corporation in the market lobbying for increased regulation. Why? Because they know it ups the cost of doing business.
Yep.
Now, someone on the street would say, well, why would they ever want to pay more in tax dollars? Because they can afford it. They know Jim's can't.
Yeah.
And so Jim's gets choked out, and they end up taking the entire market share. The same thing, it's a little apples to oranges, but 50,000 foot, the same thing's about to happen here. The same thing's happening in that no one has to have a press conference wherein the SEC and the Big Ten say, we have an announcement, we're breaking away. You don't have to do that because it's happening naturally.
Yeah.
And so you could have your Boise States in years past. You could have your UCFs in years past. That's the absolute closest that these two worlds were ever going to be to merging. They've started to drift away again, and you're going to have such a disparity in revenue and income that even what used to be G5, P5 is going to pale in comparison to how wide the gap is. Okay, so you have an opportunity right now to be proactive and to do something about it. And instead, you've got people shouting from not the mountaintops, but the hilltops, and saying, no, you can't relegate us. You can't make us second-class citizens. And the way I look at it is, number one, to be purely selfish with you, this doesn't impact me. It doesn't impact me because, like, I don't spend a lot of time talking UAB or Coastal Carolina on my show. I watch it, but the audience patterns dictate we don't talk about it. So it's irrelevant to me. I look at it, whether people believe it or not, strictly through the prism of what's best for the G5 teams. Like, what helps them give the best shot at sustainability? And what helps them is, instead of letting terms be dictated by the big boys for once in your existence in the modern age, like, get out ahead of it and create your own system and make your own rules and find partners and create your own ecosystem, and not one where the end goal is, let's be included in a playoff so we can get body bagged. How about existing in a world where you play a Georgia or you play a South Carolina in out-of-conference play, so you get your shot at the big boys. We build in a promotion and relegation system, so you do have a rung on a ladder that could get you to the top level. But in the aggregate, you're also playing for a spot in a tournament that's not about inclusion. You have a chance to win it.
Yeah.
Like Tulane, in their best of worlds this year, could make the playoff. That's it. Like, that's the end of the road. And to me, I look at that and I think it's so asinine to allow people in suits who are cashing checks you'll never see a dime from to brainwash you into thinking that's the preferred method over existing in a world that you create, you control, and you could actually win.
All right, guys, we may not do the morning show anymore. We may be live at 2 p.m. Central now, but that doesn't mean you don't need to wake up with a delicious, refreshing, and rejuvenating cup of coffee. And there's not anything more refreshing or rejuvenating than Black Rifle coffee. Everyone knows we love Black Rifle coffee, but you don't always have time to brew that coffee the traditional way. That's why you need to, hey, hurry up, NASCAR, and get some of Black Rifle's ready-to-drink cans. It's a Josh Heupel lifestyle, all right? It's perfect for people who need their coffee quickly. Each contains at least 200 milligrams of caffeine, so it gets you right and ready, and is available in a variety of delicious flavors, like Blaine's favorite, Vanilla Bomb, or my favorite, salted caramel. David has 2 favorites. They just happen to be mocha and vanilla caramel. Black Rifle Coffee is also a veteran-founded company that's operated by principled men and women who honor those who protect, defend, and support our country. And with every purchase you make, they give back. So stop running out of coffee and sign up for a coffee club subscription to have Black Rifle Coffee delivered straight to your door on a schedule that you both love. Coffee Club subscribers also receive their high-quality coffee at lower prices with free shipping. Plus, they get early access to exclusive deals and prices. So, save money and drink America's coffee. Go to blackriflecoffee.com and view their entire collection of premium roasts from light to extra dark. You can also find it in grocery and convenience stores near you. That's blackriflecoffee.com, and use that promo code BOOSTER for a great deal and a delicious drink. Well, going to these Super Leagues, David, and I think we do need to have a true sit-down and a split of, listen, Cincinnati has the capabilities to operate at a Power 5 level.
So pull them up
right?
here.
There are some Power 5s that once you go to these super leagues, without the media rights that they have in the conference right now, cannot operate at the level of other ones. So you may have some P5s that need to become G5 and some top level, Memphis maybe, right, who just got a huge bucket of money from FedEx over there. They could possibly compete at the Power 5 level. Let's cipher those out and let's split it and let's have multiple playoffs.
Yeah, so for the Group of 5 playoff, I mean, for context here, I was born in Greenville, North Carolina. My mom was teaching at ECU. I was raised in Statesboro, Georgia. My mom was teaching at Georgia Southern. Those schools put food on our table. I grew up watching Irk Russell win the Division I AA championship every year, at least compete for it. I'm running into this guy in Kmart, right? Adrian Peterson, Greg Hill, Tracy Ham, all these great players. Then Paul Johnson takes over. He's competing for the same championship. The town loved this stuff. Even if they would go lose by 30 points to Georgia at the beginning of the season, they're competing for the I AA championship. And because they did really well, they got to go up and get invited to the Sun Belt. That was a really good thing. I didn't understand how much drama there was on this until I responded to a post of yours recently, because we've asked several coaches and administrators when they come on, how do you feel about a Group of 5 having their own playoff? And some say, no, I don't want it just because from a financial sense, it's better for us to compete up here, even though we may not win the championship. And others say, no, that would be great. I think it could be lucrative, but it's always from a rational place. Some of the comments I got responded to on your post, I mean, basically saying like, I'm everything that's wrong with college football, when I thought I was taking the pro Group of 5 position. Mainly my thought is 134 football teams vying for one trophy is too many. In basketball, maybe you can get away with that because you can put 70 of them in a tournament at the end of the season and play it out. You can't do that with football. So how is this going to culminate, and do you think that I am everything that's wrong with college football?
Well, if the internet says you are, then you are. And I'm right there with you, so we can lock arms on that. I am always dumbfounded. By this particular topic, I'm really dumbfounded because it's one where I could easily sit this thing out. Like I said a second ago, I could easily sit it out, and I could watch G5 games, and I'd be totally fine with that. I don't want to white knight myself, but when I give a take on this particular topic, despite how many people call you a corporate shill for sharing your opinion, I got zero corporate interest in this. Like, by the way, do 5 seconds of research on how this show was formatted, how my show was formatted. That's the last thing that any of us in this room are. It's just wanting something that makes sense. And to go back to your point a second ago, I think you would have seen it too, one of the most common refrains was, well, you're telling me that Coastal Carolina or ECU couldn't win the playoff. Well, if that's the logic, half of the Power 4 teams couldn't win the playoff. And there is a lot of truth to that, okay? So to go back to your point, hey, if we reformatted this thing right now, I'd pull like 20 G5 teams up, and I'd send 20 plus of the current Power 4
relegation.
Teams down,
there's a word for that.
And build in a mechanism where we don't crystallize the way it looks at the outset. But the other part of that is, what's the end goal? Like, what's the end game? Because I understand there's a big difference in having a coach at a G5 program, an administrator at a G5 program's opinion on this, versus a typical fan's opinion. The typical fan, this is what's fascinating to me. They have been convinced that television metrics and bowl payouts and all of these things that don't impact them should matter to them. And this is where I think the whole PE, the private equity sector that everyone's scared of at the Power 5 level could actually work its way into the overall mainframe. Because all this is about is money. If you removed the have and have not aspect of the disparity in revenue and income, everything else we're saying makes sense. And so I wonder, like, from a major private equity standpoint out there, if they look and say, hold on, these G5s, they're clinging to this system even though they know they're going to get their brains beat in a postseason because they know it subsidizes their existence. If we subsidize their existence, we essentially buy naming rights on a lot of these mid-major type programs. They can exist because we fund their existence. Do they need to cling to that anymore? And in the aggregate, like if I'm Josh Pate Enterprises and I bankroll this thing, could I also put my sticker on a brand new playoff that right now doesn't even exist? G5 playoff doesn't even exist right now. So that's kind of a conversation I had earlier this week with some people who live in that world. And, you know, they're always over in the shadows. So you got to talk to them through like a tomato can and a string attached. But I wonder if that's where the whole private equity dam breaks a little bit. I wonder if that's where the first crack is and that's where the first seepage is. Because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about revenue disparity and a Tulane fan or an administrator or a coach who says, no, we want access to this. You want access to the payday that comes with it. No one in there, and let me say this slowly, right mind thinks that any of these teams could actually win that tournament. And anytime someone tells me, well, the tournament is not about crowning a champion, it's about the journey, it's insane to me.
That's like the, again, people who say that, hey, you play the tournament to find a winner. That's the whole reason there's an elimination tournament. Just to kind of put a bow on this, because it's a fascinating conversation, and it's amazing how worked up people get. I think a lot of this is ego from not only the fans of these group of 5 teams, because they want to be able to say, hey, look, we're as important, which nobody's saying that you don't care about your team as much as I care about the Power 5 team that I like.
Quite the opposite.
It's quite the opposite. It's that we obviously know we're operating in different arenas. Now, when you look at a group of 5 playoff, I think that could be a legitimate moneymaker that could somewhat make up for it if you can't play the Georgias during the regular season once this Super League happens. But that's why I keep saying we ought to play the spring game against teams that are group of 5 within the Power 5 states and see how that goes. But it's a fascinating conversation. It's going to be interesting to see where it goes. Half the coaches want it, half the coaches don't. I think that's a little bit of ego as well. But talking about movement, Josh, this year of college football it's a renaissance of sort. It's almost an industrial revolution of the way that college football is going to be handled, from the 12-team format in the postseason to the conference alignment at such a conference realignment at such a higher level, right? You have the Big Ten that's accumulating big-time teams. You have the Big 12 that's accumulating big-time teams. Obviously, the SEC is accumulating Texas and Oklahoma, and I want to start in the SEC. Something that drives me crazy, and I think you'll agree with me on this, is that when I hear some Texas and Oklahoma fans say, man, we're going to go in here, we just got to be able to beat Alabama, or we just got to be able to beat Georgia. To me, that is the biggest misconception of what the SEC truly is. And you can ask any coach this that has coached there, including Steve Sarkisian, who is at Texas right now. It's not having to just beat the best team, the Alabamas and the Georgias, who have some of the best rosters in the country. It's then you got to go play at Kentucky, who they've got their fair share. They could beat you on any given day. Then you got to go play Ole Miss at home. It's the teams on the periphery outside of just the top. That's why I tell Texas fans, just you need to see it first. Because again, what did Mike Tyson say? Everybody's got a plan till you get punched in the face. And Texas beat Alabama last year. Just when you look at Texas and Oklahoma, where are you on their ability to blend year one? I know they're in different spots roster-wise. I'm not asking you to say they're going to be even, but kind of how do you see it?
It's twofold. I think there's a lot of hubris and a lot of maybe unreasonable expectation on both sides. On the Texas OU side, you're right. Everybody understands the challenge when you go to Athens. Everybody understands the challenge when like LSU or Alabama come into your building. The whole going to Starkville on a Saturday for 11 a.m. kickoff, like that sounds very simple because any given year, Mississippi State could be headed towards a sub-500 finish. But then you turn on the draft the next spring, and they've got like 2 defensive linemen going first round. And they've got like a safety that goes third round, a wide receiver goes 5th round, and you're like, those guys played on the team that went 5-7? And yes, that's because the team overall wasn't great. But the bumps and bruises, like your training room doesn't look any less full Sunday morning after you went and played them and won a 33-16 slop fest, and then the cumulative effect of having to then go to Florida after that, and then A&M comes to you before you go play the Alabama game. That's the totality of carnage in the SEC, which is why depth is so paramount, and which is why the NIL portal era is not necessarily victimizing teams at the top level of the roster, but second and third level is getting gutted. And then that shows up in week 8 and week 9 in the fall. So on one side, there's a pretty sharp experience and learning curve for both of them. But then there's this other thought, I call it like just the SEC drumbeat thought, which is where a Mississippi State fan or a South Carolina fan or a Kentucky fan, teams that don't perennially exist near the top of the conference, they start looking at Texas and OU and they start listening to what we're talking about right now, and they start grinning and saying, yeah, y'all about to find out about the SEC. Well, that's true. Here's the problem, though. These teams are not getting on the SEC bus and going to the back 2 seats. They're getting on the bus. They may not sit in row 1. And Oklahoma may be a row or 2 behind Texas in year 1. But they're going to walk and walk and walk the Forrest Gump walk of shame, but they're going to find a seat, row 3, row 4, and then someone's going to tell you, get up, you're in their seat. Like they're coming into this thing better than you are. And there's a whole lot of like pride that's being taken by some of the fan bases in the SEC of adding Texas and OU in the lesson we're about to teach them and how great this is going to be. And really all it is is another loss and a quarter per average per year on your schedule. And it could bump you down even further in the bowl eligibility ranking. But also, I think the perception change of how coaches are viewed in this conference, and I think the perception change, Big Ten and SEC, of understanding what a 10-win season means, what a 9-win, 8-win season means. Florida, I'm a firm believer, could be the 13th best team in the country this year and go 8-4. Because they play at least 5 top 10 teams in a row to end the year.
That schedule's brutal.
It's insanity.
It's absolutely brutal. No, and you know, I do think Texas has a chance this year because up front, I feel like they're willing to compete, or they're built to compete. And Sark knows it. Sark's been in the conference. But David, I mean, we've talked about DeBoer as well at Alabama and kind of what, you know, forecasting his first year, and it's obviously an interesting turnover in the times. What are your thoughts on Alabama year 1 under Cam?
Yeah, so we went down there and sat down with him, got like a shocking amount of access. Like Saban was always...
Seems like everybody's getting that now.
It's pretty crazy. Like Saban was good to us when we came down there, but you're not sitting in a staff meeting at Alabama when you're sitting there. So I think that Kalen DeBoer, the talk will be, until proven otherwise, about whether or not he can recruit at a high level in the SEC, and that's age old. From the day he got hired there, that's what people talked about. So that remains to be seen. Like, I think they'll do fine. I actually think the inverse is true. A lot of people look at Nick Saban and how he recruited at Alabama, and they think to themselves, ooh, he didn't have to spend money because you got the whole Saban discount thing. And now kids aren't just going to go to Alabama at a discounted price because Saban's there. What are you going to do? Well, that's true. But what I actually think is Bama has a pretty decent war chest, or potential to have one, that they never had to explore because Saban was there. Now they're having to explore it. And like Alabama football is many things, but poverty is not one of them. So I actually think they'll be okay on that front. He upgraded their defensive staff. Their defensive coaching staff is definitively better than what they had in not just the last year, but the last couple of years of Nick Saban being there, which kind of circles back to, I think, one of the biggest mysteries and unknowns and just spots of ignorance that people have towards college football because they can't know, because they can't see behind the curtain. How hiring happens, it would blow your mind. Like, if you actually see how hiring happens and you have this like immense respect for the due diligence being done and the vetting and the interview process, that's not how it works.
No.
It's just not how it works.
It's much more buddy than what a lot of people think.
Well, it's much more agent than
oh,
some
for
people
sure.
think.
Well, that's what I mean by buddy. It's really Jimmy Sexton calling himself.
It's pretty amazing. And so they had, by Alabama standards, pretty average defensive staffs in the latter, especially last year. Look, Saban ran a lot of their defensive mechanisms last year, and people didn't know that. And I think it wore him dog-tired and was the biggest contributing factor, even above and beyond just what NIL in the portal is, to him stepping down after the year. So Kane Womack came in. And like Mo Linguist came in, and Colin Hitchler, the safeties coach, loved him.
At South.
Like, those dudes are very underrated, and they will probably become household names over the next couple of years. We'll see, man. Like, 10-2 is not a bad year. If they go 10-2 this year, I have no clue how people.
Well, you know how it is at Alabama.
If they lose 3, they'll burn it.
Yeah, they lose 3, it'll turn into fallout.
Did you have anything to add on Texas and Oklahoma?
No, I'm excited. I'm when it comes to Texas, you know, you lose a couple in the draft. Xavier Worthy, Adonai Mitchell. You get Quinn back, but I'm just worried about that secondary. Like, will that secondary be able to hold up in the SEC? You're not going to be able to outscore everybody every week in the SEC and win games. That's Tennessee. They tried it.
Shit, that's whole minute.
They got a reloaded defensive line,
It doesn't work. It doesn't work. So you're going to have some sort of a semblance of a defense, of a secondary when you walk there. Oklahoma is going to take a couple of years. It is. It is. I just don't think they're ready.
Which is so weird because they've had such a better decade than Texas did, but they're just switching at the right time. And the SEC, to me, can't have it both ways. And I don't think it'll last longer than this year once both programs come in. But they can't take pride in Texas and Oklahoma coming into the conference and saying, hey, these are 2 awesome, you know, traditional top 10 blue blood programs, and we're getting a win for adding them. But then also say, but you'll be bottom tier when you come in. And once they actually get into the conference, I think it'll be, you know.
You know how hurt the feelings would be if Texas won the SEC year 1?
Oh, you know what? As a content creator, part of me, Josh, part of me, it needs to go one or 2 ways. It needs to go really, really good or really, really bad.
Yeah,
I'll say the quiet part out loud.
One more thing. I got all the reverence in the world for the Iron Bowl. I've been to Ohio State, Michigan the past 3 years. It's the best rivalry game.
The past 3 years?
Really?
That's the best thing I've ever experienced in the sport.
All right, Josh Pate, everybody. Thanks for...
But so let me add this. I've been to Texas and OU 2 times in the past 3 years, and it's a totally unique experience under any other rivalry game because it's neutral site. It's not like Legion Field used to be in Birmingham. There is an argument that will be made by them, and it's going to be a tough stance for me to take, that Texas OU becomes the best rivalry game in the conference. People who know the Iron Bowl will think that's just sacrilege to even suggest. I know the Iron Bowl. Dude, I grew up on the Chattahoochee River. Like, I grew up right in the thick of that thing. I've been to the Iron Bowl like a dozen times. I've been to Texas OU, probably 2 of the best games that rivalry's ever had. Last 3 years speaks for itself in Michigan, Ohio State. I'm not saying it overtakes the Iron Bowl in the SEC. I'm just saying Texas OU, like, played at the highest level, takes a backseat to no rivalry game I've experienced. It's awesome.
Well, again, girls can look unbelievably pretty in many different ways.
So even neutral site, do you think rivals, the home and home aspect to rivalry?
I don't always prefer it. I wish Georgia-Florida was played home and home, actually.
I
couldn't care less about Jacksonville.
I do too.
But the Texas OU thing, because of the setting and because of what's so awesome with the Cotton Bowl setup, and I'm a big fan of buildings that are over 500 years old. Yeah. I wish we did that exclusively in college football. If you have like a field media pass at that game, you can go up the tunnel at halftime, and you can go out into the Texas State Fair, and it's not crowded because everyone's in the game. So you can go like funnel cake, you can go carnival games, and then you can walk back down, and you're like right on the field again for the third quarter. And it's 11 a.m., which I love, and everyone else hates the early kickoff, but I love it because you can get home that day. The last 2 times I've been there, it's been shootout games. Yeah. Like both games decided in the final minutes. So admittedly, I saw it at its best, like wall-to-wall sunshine, everything was great. I love that game being neutral.
Do you like it being middle of the season?
I love
it's also not rivalry.
Love it, yes. Like I love rivalry week because how can you not love it? But I actually would prefer for us to go mustard and ketchup, like spread rivalries out. Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, I mean, Auburn, Georgia moved, from the back.
Sure.
Oh, HelloFresh is a delicious food company. And make it a priority this summer because it's quick, it's convenient recipes. They get delivered right to your door. Just choose your meals and select a delivery date. HelloFresh handles all the meal planning, shopping, and most of the prep. So all you have to do is open your box and get cooking. David, you have a big family. HelloFresh is a big part of you feeding that family. Please describe HelloFresh for the people.
The tacos that we had, I think it was 2 weeks ago, that Darby Lou made from HelloFresh, I'm still thinking about them to this day.
And it's my wife's pescatarian, so she can choose the fish option 2, which is fantastic. And Blaine, you're single, still ready to mingle, but it's easy to prep and get ready.
It is. Open your box and let me cook. That's what HelloFresh does.
God, I love when you put it like that. HelloFresh gets that you want options. It's basically old Paul Johnson and Georgia Tech out there. The real ones know what that means. And you don't want the same old thing all the time. That's why they offer 45 recipes to choose from every single week. So you'll never get bored. And you can always find something new to try and love. And when you sign up today, you'll unlock free dessert for life. Satisfy your sweet tooth. Hold on. Free dessert for life.
For life?
Life, son.
Dang. So, man, that one hits different. So they got decadent desserts of your choice in every HelloFresh box for free. Man, we're throwing out some great deals here. So much variety. There are options for everyone and every lifestyle. So go to HelloFresh.com/booster suite for free dessert for life, all right? There's 1 dessert item per box while the subscription's active. That's a free dessert for life. Can't believe I'm putting those words together in that order. At HelloFresh.com/booster suite. BOOSTER. Y'all know how to spell sweet. At least I hope so. But we know the way the education system's going these days. That's America's #1 meal kit. Say hello to HelloFresh.
That is true. So you brought up Michigan, so I want to ask you about the defending national champs right now. I can't believe I'm even saying that.
Wait a second. So they could take that championship from you guys this year?
That's what I want to ask you. Well, I want to ask you about the whole thing. I mean, Jim Harbaugh couldn't figure out the Urban Meyer problem, had good seasons, but couldn't figure that problem out. Then all of a sudden, just like you talked about, these last 3 years, what are they, 42-3, something like that? I mean, 3 college football playoff appearances, 3 Big Tens, finally cracked the code this past year despite all the adversity. Jim Harbaugh suspended multiple games at the front end, multiple games on the back end for this Connor Stallions, sign investigation stuff. The team overcomes all that and wins the the national championship. What were your thoughts? Because I don't think I've talked to you since all of this broke out. Just for that team to be able to overcome that adversity, had the most players drafted this year, and then Jim Harbaugh leaves to the NFL. What are your thoughts?
So the week all that went down, they played Penn State.
Yeah.
And I was up at that game, and I was outside of Michigan's locker room 2.5 hours before kickoff. So they get to a stadium really early. Like, they get to a venue before most teams get there. And so they've already been there like 3 hours before kickoff. They're there. Harbaugh's not supposed to be in the building. He's not supposed to be on the premises. He's supposed to be in a hotel room, per Pete Thamel at ESPN,
okay,
until a ruling comes down. All right? Their team buses pull up. They drop the players off. They all pull off. This one bus backs up under Beaver Stadium right to Michigan's locker room. And there are constantly people with earpieces in, walking on bus, walking off bus. And it's fully tented. It's like these windows in the studio. So I don't know who's on there, but I pretty much know who's on there. So then the ruling comes down. He's not going to be eligible to play.
Yeah, he was in there like eating some parts, something just freaking out.
So, but here's I called that Michigan team the other night the last great college football team, and it was a play on words. I don't mean there's never going to be another great team, but we have grown up and we've existed in an era where the modus operandi is hopefully you have rock solid culture and rock solid development. And you go and recruit high school classes, and they come up together, and they hopefully not, but in Michigan's case, they had to lose together. They had to overcome adversity together, and then by the time they get to be seniors, they've beaten Ohio State 3 years in a row, and they culminate it like it's a perfect story. Yeah. And you had the ton of off-the-field stuff, which would have fractured a lot of locker rooms.
Yes.
But because of the continuity, and because a lot of those guys didn't leave last year when they had big NIL offers, and they took less money to stay at Michigan, like definitively less money, they weren't able to be pulled apart.
Yes.
In fact, I would say it galvanized them even more. It had the reverse effect that a lot of people thought. When will we ever see a team that exists like that again? You'll see teams win titles every year. They'll probably be chock full of transfer portal guys. I'm not demonizing it. It is the way it is. But that Michigan team, if and I know this is tough, if people can remove what they thought about the whole Connor Stallions thing for a second, just watching that, because I remember being down at that Orange Bowl when McCarthy and those guys got run by Georgia, and they're standing there on the field watching them celebrate. And then the next 2 years, you come up short in playoff games you probably should win. And, dude, they go to overtime against Alabama. What if they lose that game?
Yep.
Think about how different the history books look. It's like the Buffalo Bills of college football. You got there a lot of times. The best you could do is knock on the door. You could never get in. But instead, they culminate maize and blue confetti, and that was unbelievable to be around, man.
I actually think that had a lot to do with Nick Saban retiring as well. I think it was many things that went into it. But it feels like the last coach, the bastion of trying to do it that way is Dabo Swinney.
Sure.
But it's not going to work. It's just not going to work. You either evolving or you're dissolving. And now, and as sad as it is, we talk about reality for the G5, reality this, reality that, reality hanging with a wiffle ball bat. At the end of the day, you are going to have to evolve to the times to be able to get the players in.
When you talk about the perseverance that team for them to overcome, I think it also speaks to the fact that they didn't think they were doing anything ethically wrong within the walls of the program. Not to say that a specific rule here or there wasn't broken. It's hard to, at this point, clearly some rule was broken, and for that there should be some punishment. I just don't know, like all these people from East Lansing and from Columbus talking about an asterisk culture. If you do something wrong usually and you're found out, you crumble under the weight of that, right? That team said #bet, counting us out, and went undefeated and beat everyone.
Yeah.
Beat Nick Saban.
The other thing I remember about that week of that playoff game is we were out there, and you have like the extended week, so you got the team media days, and they're practicing out in Pasadena and stuff. So I've been in those settings many times when Bama's about to play someone in like a postseason setting or even an SEC championship game setting. And about 9.5 times out of 10, the vibe you get from the other team is not we're defeated, but you get the vibe that it's going to take something extra special for us to beat them. We're going to have to be 120% of what we've been. We're going to have to do some things differently. We got to pull things out. We got to dust the cobwebs off. Anything you've sketched on a pizza box, like we got to incorporate it here. So I was around Michigan that week, and like they were so emphatic, not in a cocky way either, but just like in a matter-of-fact way of, no, like who we are, we'll be fine. We'll beat them. Like, and if we don't, we don't. But we're not doing a single thing different. We're not changing a single thing. And I remember thinking that, and I was almost of the mentality of, we'll see. Like you're going to bully Alabama? We'll see.
Yeah.
And sure enough, they went and won the game.
Wow.
Yeah. It's amazing. Dance with the one that brought you at the end of the day.
Well, I remember watching that Penn State game. I think there's a total of 3 passes the entire
Oh, yeah. It was like a Greg Maddox game. It's over.
Like great to watch.
Yeah.
I loved watching it. You know, one conference I want to talk about that, you know, no one really talks about anymore, that's the ACC. One team I'm really interested in is Miami Hurricanes. Cam Ward. I think he's going to be a big piece. He's got the running back from Oregon State, who's a good piece. But if you're Mario Cristobal, after what happened last year, if there's ever a time, it's this year. What's your thoughts on Miami, and what's your outlook a little bit for them this season?
So they made the move with the Martinez kid from Oregon State this week. And I was down there last week and talking to some offensive staffers, and they were really like brutally honest. And it was kind of sharing the sentiment that we were good at running back last year. But we had debates in our building last year. Like, should we try and make big moves in the portal? And we allowed ourselves to become convinced, you know, like Parrish and Chaney, like those guys, they're good enough. They'll get us where we need to get. They weren't bad players. But I think they had like a 600-yard rusher. That was the best they had on the team last year. And they weren't going to make that same mistake twice. So, like, I knew actually a couple of months ago when we went down there and talked to them for the first time, they were about to make some big moves. There was going to be some guys on that roster that were starters that weren't going to be there anymore. And Parrish was one of the first ones. And I'm not going to say it was a done deal, but it was pretty well decided. Like, they were going to make a home run splash in the running back room. And then when they got Ward, like that was expected at one time. Then they thought they had lost him to the NFL. And when they got that call, like when he announces, yeah, I'm going to come down there, they circled the wagons and said, this is it. Like, we're not a window. It's not like Ole Miss where you're saying they better get it done this year or else they'll never get it done. But they said, this is our shot. And we can either get him and say, all right, now let's hope we can win this year. Or we can get him and say, let's do everything in our power in this spring portal window to arm ourselves to make sure there's no doubt. Like, we got to leave no doubt. And they brought him in, and I was down there midway through their spring ball, and it's closed practice, and we're in there watching, and Ward is an animal. Like, and the other thing about him is he walked in there, and he doesn't know anyone at Miami, and he came from Russia, like the other side of the world. He's up in Pullman, Washington. But the guy, all three of you have seen this before. The guys who walk in the building who are like true alpha personalities, it doesn't matter if they've been there 5 minutes or 5 years. The room immediately gravitates around them. The locker room gravitates around them. That's Cam Ward. So you've got elite athleticism, but from the neck up, just from the intangibles, he is not what Tyler Van Dyke was last year. I don't mean that disrespectfully. I just mean that guy's wired different. You just saw quarterback transfer out of there because that quarterback room knew immediately when he walked in, that's the guy. And they're third in FanDuel odds right now to win that thing this year in the ACC. I think that odds market will be fun to watch.
It will be. Look, we know being an adult's hard, but it's even harder when you owe back taxes. Or you still have unfiled returns. That can really weigh on your mind, especially when the IRS, well, they've become more determined than ever, and they just hired like 90,000 of them, which is pissing everybody off. I think even the people that got hired. I mean, their chief data and analytic officer revealed that the IRS is focused on an enforcement project with an average return on an investment of $6 for every $1 spent. Yeah, that ain't good for us, buddy. They're targeting individuals and businesses that currently owe back taxes or haven't yet filed their returns or probably voted Republican. But with Tax Network USA, the nation's leading tax relief firm, they know the tax code and they'll fight for you. With a record of negotiating over $1 billion in tax relief for their clients, their team's knowledgeable in handling any type of issue. So whether you owe $10,000 or $10 million, they can help. And if you owe $10 million, buddy, you need to call right when you get done hearing this. Even if you don't have all your personal or business records from over the years, they can get you filed and up to date. So don't face the IRS without a professional. It's not a smart move. Contact Tax Network USA for their best strategic advice to help reduce or even eliminate your tax debt. You can call today, 1-800-245-6000. That's 1-800-245-6000. Or visit their website at tnusa.com/booster. That's tnusa.com/booster. They'll give you a free private consultation on how you can settle your tax debt today. That's a big T, a big N, and a USA.com/booster. we have a saying, nature versus nurture. Nature always wins.
Sure.
But when you look at Miami, and the thing I like about Cam Ward is, yes, he's elusive, he can run, but he elongates the play from within the pocket. He can extend the play from outside the pocket with his eyes downfield. One of the things that I know NFL scouts really look at, and I think it's one of the reasons he got as much playing, looking at the NFL as he did. He can make every throw. But when I look at Miami, and I'm interested to see what y'all think here, I see a little bit of a parallel between the Miami team this year, situationally, circumstantially, between the Miami team this year and the Ohio State team this year. Because if you look at it, Ohio State, I think, has had, if Will Howard works out, which I think there's a good chance he can, I think Ohio State is the top 2 roster in college football right now, overall, when you look at it from the top to the bottom. And they've upgraded their roster from what they had the previous year. Their rival just went undefeated. Michigan won the national championship. You look at Miami, I think this Miami roster, when you look at the line of scrimmage, I think they're going to be as good as they have been. Mario's been building that thing with humongous Siberian cave trolls, up front, because that's what he does. You add Cam Ward, you add Damian. I know they lost Colby, but they added some pieces at wide receiver. Your rival just went 13-0 in Florida State, and you've got to make a move. So I do see some parallels there in a chip-on-the-shoulder mentality between Ohio State and Miami. I think there's a pretty decent chance that Miami wins the ACC this year. I don't want to go that far.
I wonder what Louisville's odds are.
Well, I think we got to see with Brom in year 2 in that league. How do you adjust the adjustment? Even though I'm a big, I'm a big Brom guy. Big Brom and Petrino guy at the end of the day when it comes to play calling, personnel, formations, calling plays to set up other plays and things like that. But I do see some parallels there. And I do, I wonder if there's going to be an ACC, here down the road in a couple of days. But as we're kind of getting toward the end of this, it's Josh Pate. If you don't know who that is, just walk outside and, go touch grass or something. As the kids say. I want to go back to the Big Ten for a second because there's another interesting angle this year talking about conference realignment. Dan Lanning and Oregon, I feel like, fit in the Big Ten better than they fit in the Pac-12.
I agree.
Which is the way that he built that. I think there's a legitimate chance with an experienced quarterback in Dylan Gabriel, with their ability to play up front. When you look at the transition that Oregon has to make, it's so much smaller compared to the other teams that are going into the Big Ten. How do you see kind of Oregon and Dan's first year in the Big Ten? We talked about Texas and OU in the SEC, but how do you see it up there?
They've been preparing for it since he got there.
Yep.
I mean, the thing that they do is they recruit defensive line like he's in the SEC.
Very true.
And they leverage the Oregon brand, which is there to be leveraged to be a national recruiter. USC is just trying to start doing this and understanding that you can't just say California pumps out a lot of 5-stars and decide, well, we'll just recruit the West Coast. Because half of that's true. Like California does put out a lot of 5-stars. They put out no legit offensive linemen and defensive linemen. You don't go out there to get that. You go to Mississippi and Georgia and Louisiana. And Dan Lanning and company, they've understood that. And not only have they done it recruiting, they've done it in the portal to where when you look at their depth chart in year 3 under him, they've got frontline guys, they've got secondary guys, they've got versatility. They can give you different fronts, different looks. And that's so important because last year they go 0-2 against Washington, and 2 times in a row they end up like being the second most physical team, and that's not expected because you're looking at DeBoer and Penix and you're thinking flash and sizzle. And I know good and well that Oregon staff thought, especially the second time around when they got him in the Pac-12 title game, they thought physically they will not be able to hold up. Like whatever happened in week 1 or week 2 or week 3 happened.
We're built for this.
And they weren't.
Yeah.
I mean, Washington outrushed them in the Pac-12 championship game. So the point is, that's a learning experience. Like Lanning's 5 minutes old as a head coach. It's still very new. So you're learning things all the time. Intensity is never going to be a problem. Focus, willingness to embrace expectation, that's not a problem there. Roster building's not a problem. It's just there's a difference in the DNA that you need to have when I cut you open to be like a 9 or 10 win program versus one that's tough enough to be like shot for shot in those big games in the fourth quarter. And you got to be able to take like 2 haymakers, stay on your feet, and be the one who delivers the third, because that's what games against Michigan are like.
Yep.
That's even a random game against Wisconsin can be like that. And you're entering a league now where a lot of teams, if you're not careful, they won't match you 5-star for 5-star, but they will bloody your nose because that's been the only way they can exist.
Yeah.
They've never been able to do
especially
anything.
in November when snow's falling.
Well, what do they say in UFC? Let me get it to the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Let me get this game on the ground. And to be honest with you, David, and you've talked about this, and you're the one that brought this up. Dan Lanning isn't the first guy to go to the Pac-12 and do it. Kyle Whittingham's been doing it.
I mean, Utah was back-to-back champs and may have won it 3 years in a row if Cam Rising didn't get hurt. And now Cam Rising's coming back. They're going to the Big 12. I want to ask you about another team leaving the former Pac-12 to go to the Big 12, Colorado. Deion Sanders, the ultimate draw there is like he has to win the transfer portal, right? He can't. A lot of teams can just break even. He has to win it. And he's trying to change a culture from a 1-win team. Got 4 wins in his first year. Right now, there's been a mass exodus of players out of Colorado, but he's also bringing players in for the transfer portal. Right now, with what you're seeing, are they bringing in better players that are leaving? And what should the expectations be for year 1 in the Big 12 now?
Man, they don't have an easy schedule out there. And I am not a believer. And this is going to be tested, okay? I'm not a believer that you can build a sustainable winner through the portal. And I don't think most coaches are believers in that. Now, there has been widely held consensus opinion before that's been proven wrong. There's really only one case study in the sport right now because there's only one team that's trying to build through the portal.
Can I guess?
Go ahead.
Ole Miss?
It is not Ole Miss.
Ohio State?
It is actually Colorado.
Yeah.
Believe it or not. Believe it or not. Because even Ole Miss, we did this on our show 2 nights ago. Ole Miss is the most portal-reliant team in the SEC, but their last 4 recruiting classes were 31st or better.
It's half and half. They're a half and half.
Colorado just finished 119th in high school recruiting. So it's even then, it's apples to bowling balls comparison. So the whole thing with Deion that fascinates me is like, what is it reasonable to expect? Because the same principle applies here. When you go to the Big 12, this is a whole league of developmental programs. This is a whole league of folks used to not being in the top 20 in recruiting. And you think that's a good thing because you think, oh man, we'll go in there, we'll have the most talented players because we'll portal them in. Great. Here's what you're going to deal with. You're going to deal with like Kansas State or Iowa State or TCU, and you're going to deal with any given year teams that have known from birth we're not going to be star reliant. And we're not going to lean on 18-year-olds to win us games. We're going to bring guys in. And it doesn't matter if the offensive tackle is 6'5", 240 when we get him out of high school, because we need him to play at 20 years old when he's 6'5", 295. And by then, that thing you just saw with Michigan, maybe not as talented, but that's on display all across the Big 12. You've got like rock-solid units of teams. And how many times do we have to see like 5-star overly talented, 4-star overly talented rosters just get steamrolled because there's a difference in a collection of individuals in a team? So that's my question to anybody. Do they have a team at Colorado? Or do they just have mercenaries who are thrown into a building? Because you'll win a couple of games. You'll pull your TCU upset. Like you can slap someone in the back of the head. But if you think you're going to run through a league of Utahs and like Kansas States and Kansas, like if you think you're running through them by just portaling your way through.
Yeah.
I think that's like believing you're going to win a bodybuilding contest just eating cotton candy every day. It's delicious, it's good, but
Love it.
Man, you can't do that long.
We talk about it in the NBA a lot too, don't we?
conversation we have all the time.
I mean, go ahead, hit on that.
Yeah, well, do you go and sign, certain players year-on-year basis, or do you draft your team? Kind of like what the Warriors did. But right now you're seeing it with the Nuggets. With the Bucks. Like the way the Nuggets are built, there's not one, and we can point out Jokic, we can point out Jamal Murray, but there's not one individual, and they're a team. They play as a team. They drafted as a team, and that's what the proof is in the pudding. That's what's winning out lately.
Well, I tell you what, you talk about keeping it all together. When you can use the Colorado football team and then go to a Denver Nuggets reference, all within the same state.
Just hit the entire market.
I will say, I do think, I wonder if there's a formula, and there is one that I've seen with a couple of teams, but where I think Colorado, I think you can survive getting guys through the portal at skill positions. And I always say you use it to plug the holes of the ship. You don't build the ship out of it because it will not stay afloat. Until Colorado gets adequate enough up front, and not just your starting 5 on the offensive line, not just your starting 4, or if you run a 3 down, 3-3-5, 3-4, which turns into 4 down. A lot of people won't say that, but it really does. Until you have that depth, you are not going to be able to consistently win at a high level in college football. So is there a formula or is there a recipe where, you turn on Rachel Ray and she's like, hey, guess what? You can go get these wide receivers out of the portal. You can maybe go snag a quarterback out of the portal, but you need to develop these offensive linemen. What cost Gus Malzahn his job at Auburn from the most part, in my opinion, was his lack of ability to recruit, sign, and develop high school offensive linemen. And I still think that stays true today, especially at the tackle position. So do you see a formula there?
Yeah, well, here, let me ask this question. What's the expectation? Because we asked that like 5 minutes ago. We didn't really answer it. What's the expectation at Colorado? If the expectation is to make a bowl game, a lot of what we're saying could work. Like you could portal your way to 6 wins, maybe.
No.
But that's not what Deion talks about.
No.
You can't
And
have
Deion
his
set up the
brand. You can't have his brand. And
Right.
I mean, he's on Aflac commercials with Nick Saban.
Sure.
I'm talking about GOAT, greatest of all time.
Headquartered in
you know?
Columbus, Georgia.
And
by
so
Did not know that.
Yeah.
to win the champion, they are. To win the championship, that's got to be the goal, right?
He's talking playoff.
Yeah.
They're the ones talking playoff, not us.
Yes.
So if you're talking playoff, well, all of a sudden I've got to like fine tune the microscope a little bit. And if I fine tune the microscope, you said it, man. People almost get tired of going to the same point, but it's the same thing that wins that's always won. It's line of scrimmage play.
Yes, the truth.
And it's to the point where folks want to overthink the room and they want to say, I'm tired of talking line of scrimmage. Well, are you tired of being up 30-6 in the fourth quarter?
Yeah, look at Michigan. Let me go show you. Look at Georgia.
I don't know how tired of line of scrimmage when they played North Dakota State.
Well, I have Auburn fans that hit me up all the time. They're like, man, Cam Coleman's going to help lead us to the SEC championship. Okay, I need to know what we have. Who's the third tackle?
Yeah.
That's what I know.
Yeah.
Who's the guy that if the center gets hurt, we got to kick his ass over and bring somebody else in
we
to put it guard?
like we talked
that's how you
about,
bridge
some
the
people
gap.
would call in and talk about, well, God, I just felt like our team, our picks in the draft were so boring. I was like, you know how much better you got? You took 2 tackles and 2 guards.
Yeah,
It's Cowboys.
perfect.
Yeah.
It's hard to go wrong with that formula. But Josh, man, it's hard to go wrong when we get to talk to you, man. First time in the studio. I know
Yeah.
You're a busy guy. Gas station wars, college football coming up.
Here you go, Josh.
Chasing tornadoes. I'm just surprised.
I don't know if I
Get
grabbed it.
it off him. Get off him. Get off him. Nonverbal. No, but man, we really appreciate you coming by, brother. Congrats on all the success, my friend.
Two favors I
ahead,
ask.
go ahead.
Number 1, please invite me back.
Oh, you're always invited.
Number 2, get me that clip as fast as you can, because I think I have a use for that later. Too.
Okay, I will. We'll make sure and clip that. They're a lot smarter than us. But look, Late Kick, one of the few other sports shows that I listen to that I actually enjoy listening to. You do a heck of a job, man, and always love when we get
I appreciate
by.
it, guys. Appreciate
Anytime.
all of you.
All right, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And look, we'll find out who wins the gas station wars.